This is Austin Liti Limits, where authors talk to authors about books and the craft of storytelling. Sponsored by Blue Ink Review, because typing the end is just the beginning. Find out more at blueinkreview.com.
In this episode, we had a chance to sit down with author Mandy Haynes. Mandy grew up in Greenbrier, Tennessee. She dropped out of high school at age 15 and went on the road with a band of musicians before settling down and working in the medical field. She had wanted to write since she was a child, but never seriously considered it until an accidental encounter with a writing group and a mentor who taught English at a community college. He submitted one of her works for a writing competition without telling her. It won, and she never looked back. She has published 2 collections of short stories, and she talked with Austin Liti Limits about her work and how a writer's observations can often lead to great fiction. Welcome to the show, Mandy Haynes.
Thanks. I'm so excited to be here.
Excellent. So how are you doing in Florida?
Good. It's nice here especially since you're kind of stuck inside. You know, like I'm a mile from the beach and then 2 miles from the marshes. So if you have to be stuck somewhere, it's a good place to be.
So whenever I have a morning when some calamity starts to happen, I know I have an interview. My battery in my car died this morning after taking my daughter to school. And before I interviewed Kevin Wilson, 5 minutes before, my spigot in my bathroom burst and water was shooting out. So my wife and I were outside trying to turn the water off. And then right before I interviewed Simon Hahn, the power went off. And I did my interview over over my data connection on my phone. So I know we're going to have a good interview because my battery died this morning.
Well, I haven't had any calamities, which is a surprise with the dog.
That's good.
Yeah, it's like, what is it, noon? I'm usually, there's usually one by now, but yeah, knock on wood.
So you have 2 excellent short story collections. We have Walking the Wrong Way Home and Sharp as a Serpent's Tooth. Did you initially start these as collections, or were they stories that were kind of around in the drawer that you collected later? How did these 2 books come together?
Well, it's funny. It's like I never ever thought that I'd write short stories. But I worked at Vanderbilt, and every summer they had the summer reading edition of the Vanderbilt paper, and you could, submit stories. And the first, it's just like that just, I loved it. And that was fun. So I started, submitting to other, actually, that was the second place I submitted. The other, it's a Ball State's #1, was a chapter from a novel that I'd started. And then it's like, it won. That was my first submission ever, and it won. And I was like, then I was hooked on short stories. So I just would write stories, about people that I met, and every story, I actually don't even think of them as a finished story. They're starts to novels. So it's like everyone in both collections, every single one of them, it's like I'd like to go back to them and write more.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that question. So most of the stories are told in first person. So it seems like you like taking on the persona of your characters. Do the stories start with the characters? I mean, do you have a character that pops in your mind, or do you have an idea for a story that you fit a character into? How do most of these start with you?
It's funny. It's probably 50-50. Some of the stories are like something that I saw, like something happened, and I thought, wouldn't that be interesting if a lady was there? And but some of them, though, it's like a character. You'd meet somebody or like a stranger, at a grocery store, or and then you think, oh, what if she was doing this or he was here? So yeah, there's really no rhyme or reason.
That's funny. I have those epiphanies all the time. I'll be somewhere just like you're saying and think, oh, imagine if this guy and this gal were doing this, or what if these unlikely characters were friends, and then my brain just starts going.
Yeah, driving into, I used to like it, gosh, I was in my car for like an hour and a half every morning and afternoon coming home from work. And even people I'd see in traffic, like at a, sitting in their car, I would like look over and think, oh, I wonder if, like, does she have a house full of kids? Does this guy, is he divorced? Is he a widow? Like, like who made his breakfast? Did he break, and always a story going. Always.
So do you find that you're a people watcher when you go places?
Oh, absolutely. Ask any of my ex-husbands, it was a problem with every single with all three. They hate, like, because they were like, you're so nosy. And I was like, I'm not nosy. I'm just interested. There's a difference.
Right. Yeah, I find I like to watch the way people carry themselves, how they may sit at the bar, how they're walking through the mall. If they're waiting in line, what are they doing? I mean, it's just so fascinating to me. And I find that I start zoning out on people. And then I think, I like that little tick that person has. I'm going to use that for a character.
Yeah. Do you find yourself watching people's feet? Like when they're walking like that? Like,
I watch all of it.
Well, it's like, something about how people like you think, oh, you walk, you just put one foot in front of the other. Pay attention next time, like watch how they place their feet when they're walking. It's like, and then, the puff of their pants, and then, just work your way up. But it's like, sometimes just when you're in a crowd of people, just try to watch their feet and just see that. Like, there's so many different ways that people.
That's very true. Yeah. And that reminds me, the other night I was watching Stephen Colbert clip on YouTube, and Trevor Noah, the talk show host, came walking out. And he had a very interesting way that I'd never noticed of walking. He kind of walks on his tippy toes a little bit. And I thought that was very interesting because he's kind of a tall, big guy, but that's not how most men that size walk.
Yeah, like John Wayne. John Wayne had a very like particular way that he walked. But like musicians, I love before, COVID, when you'd go out and go to hear music, and everybody would get, like when I was with them, because I wanted to watch, like I loved watching like fiddle players, the ones, some of them, they'll get up on their tiptoes, like when they're playing, some of them rock back on the balls of their feet, and like guitar players, banjos, like my favorite. Watch their fingers, it's like, whoa. And then, if they're tapping their feet, and sometimes it's like they're tapping their foot to a beat that has nothing to do with the music. And so it's all of that. Like, there's stories everywhere.
So do you have training in writing? Did you study writing in college, or how did you get into writing? You'd mentioned the story that you entered that won. Was that your first opportunity at writing? How did you start?
Okay, well, I actually dropped out of high school at 15. Yeah, and I got my GED, and that's as far as I went, as far as, school. Never took a writing course. Yeah, it's so funny. It's a long story, but I met a group of people at a little coffee shop. We went to hear music. It was a Writers in the Round, but they weren't there. And this group of eclectic, just cool, interesting people were sitting at a table with notebooks, and they just said, "Come over and sit down." And we're a little writing group. So I joined that afternoon. Didn't think I'd go back because it was like an hour and a half away from my house. But we just had so much fun, and I'd never done it. Like I'd never been in a writing group. I'd never written anything except, I loved to read, and I always wanted to, as a kid, I wanted to write, but life happened. And well, long story short, one of the members that in the group that wasn't there, everybody kept saying, "You've got to come back and meet Elkin. He's got to read your stuff. You'll love him." So eventually I met Elkin. Come to find out, he was an English professor at Vol State University. He's the one that submitted my first story.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then so when it went, and he just was like, he passed away about 6-7 years ago. But God, like 4 years, we were, I don't know, maybe longer than that. But he was like my biggest fan. Like, he had me come to his classes. He taught creative writing summer classes. He had me come and speak to the students. They all read my stuff. Like, a lot of his students, my stories are what they wrote their exams on, which was just amazing. So then I was like, oh, I want to take a creative writing course. And Elkin was like, no, don't, because you got what we try to teach. And, yeah, don't change your voice. Like, you just keep doing what you're doing and don't worry about it. Which I did worry about it. When you, like, all these authors I love, and you'll read their bios and, all the things that they've done. And, I thought, I'll never be a writer,
Right.
But then William Gay and all these other, it's like, okay, well, hang on, maybe I can.
So you're what they call an autodidact. I'm an autodidact, which means you teach yourself how to do something. And Stephen King and his son, Joe, they both mentioned that they learn the most by reading. And that a lot of times, if they had to choose between a day session of reading and writing, they'd take reading over writing, because they feel that that's how they kind of learn. And I feel the same way. I mean, I studied literature in college, but I didn't study writing. I just read books and wrote papers and tore them apart. So when I got out of school, I knew how books were put together. I just didn't know how to put them together.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you read a lot and you figured out how to put them together from reading. So what were you reading at the time that you thought, well, I could do this, but then you didn't? What were you reading?
Oh my gosh. I started reading before I started kindergarten. I had a sister that was 2 years older. So, she was 7. She was just learning how. And, it was easier for my mom just to set us both at the table, instead of trying to keep me occupied and my sister doing her homework or whatever. And so, I wanted to do everything she was doing, like that. And we had tons and tons of books. Like, I remember my first book when I was a kid that my mom read to me. It was Miss Twiggly's Tree. I was little, but I just loved that book, and I used to carry it around, and I thought, I want my name on a book one day. Like, I want this, and I didn't have any idea what it was, but I thought, and I love to tell stories. Like, I was a big story, my mom. I loved, especially scary stories. I loved to scare my friends, and make them cry. That was my big thing. So I kept thinking, words are powerful. Like, I want them on paper, and I want somebody to carry a book with my name on it and my stories in it, but never thinking of actually, a writer. I just wanted to do that. I got a typewriter. My mom and dad got me a typewriter. They found it somewhere, and it's like the ribbon I would wet the ribbon and use it. And like, I would just type up stories, put them together, staple them together, and nerd.
So you had mentioned that a lot of your short stories, you feel like they're opening chapters to novels. And in the newer book, Sharp as a Serpent's Tooth, I noticed that those stories are quite a bit longer than in the first book. So are you edging your way towards writing something that's novel length?
Well, I have a novel. I have a novel that's first draft. So, it's time for the revisions. I actually finished it 5 years ago, which means, I've got to rewrite the whole thing, is what that means, when you do the first revision, pretty much. And then I have another one that's about a third of the way through. The first story that was submitted, that Elkin submitted, was actually a chapter from that, the novel that's in its first draft.
So you're so busy with so many things. You help run the Pulpwood Queens and Timber Guys book club. You're now a magazine publisher. You run a press. When do you find the time to write?
Well, I'm lucky. I started working like really young, and I worked at Vanderbilt for 26 years. And I always said, I need to quit my job and write, like everybody, that's everybody's dream, right? So I'm lucky now, even though I do have a lot of things that I am doing, I'm my own boss. So if I want to stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning, right, and then sleep until 9, stay in my pajamas all day. It's like, it's great. Like, so I just write. I'm not a person that writes. I always like it when I read where people say you have to write every day. I just that is not me, because it is not the same. And why would I force myself to write something that's not good instead of waiting for the story to come? And like, you don't have to be sitting there writing. Actually, like when people say that, it's like I like to felt and make other things, and like graphics, like fun. Like I'm always I've always been a doodler. Like when I was in school, like home, like test pages and stuff, I was drawing all the time. That's when I'm writing. I'm not actually putting the words on the paper, but I'm working on the stories. So to sit at the computer and write like from 9 to 10 every day, I'm not that person.
That's interesting. Yeah, I was going to ask about a book you read lately that blew your mind. One that I really enjoyed, that also I found a lot of humor in, although it's not a humorous novel, is Valentine by Elizabeth Wetmore. When I was talking to her, I had mentioned that the characters have a very kind of like a comedian's eye for observing other people in the town, and I was laughing a lot, and it kind of surprised me, because it's a dour, hard story, but it had some very funny moments in it. So,
well, which is just like real life, just like real life,
Right.
God, I love that book so much. Like when I read Valentine, I was working at the bookstore here. I worked at a bookstore for a little while, which was my dream job, and the advanced reader copy of Valentine came in. And when I saw it, I thought Valentine, my first thought was Valentine, and I thought, and I put it on the shelf in the back for the booksellers, to read. And then it's like when I hold it in my hand, I was like, this is something right here. It's like, I know, look at it again, looked at it again. I was like, took it home, read it that day, went back to work, told everybody, like, you got to read it. Donna, the owner, she was so cute. She ordered a bunch of copies. I wrote the shelf talkers. Like I was like, you got to read this book. Right. You got to read it. It's so, God, it was fantastic. And like you said, she just did such a great job. You loved all the characters. Like you really cared for every single person.
Yeah.
There wasn't a shallow person it was great.
It was great. So I know you're a music fan. Do you listen to music while you're writing?
Not while I'm writing, but that is I love to listen to music like when I'm felting or doodling, doing other stuff. I'm a huge, I love songs that tell stories, like story songs. And some of them are so good that I'll stop and I'll look up the song and read the lyrics. And it's like, if you can read a song, that's what's so funny when people are like, it's so hard to write a short story, to get, and it's like, well, look at these songwriters that get a story in 3 minutes,
There's a musician, a singer that has really good stories in his songs is Kevin Morby. You ever listen to Kevin Morby?
No.
Yeah, you should look him up. He's got an album called City Music. That's the one you should check out. If you could imagine like Bob Dylan and Lou Reed kind of being mushed together.
Yeah.
Because he kind of sounds like Dylan, but he has more of an eccentric kind of personality. I bet you'd like him a lot. But he's got a lot of characters. In fact, some of the characters of the songs are female characters. When he's singing.
I'll have to look him up.
So it's very interesting. All right. Well, now's the time in the show where we do the lightning round. You ready to do the lightning round? It's inspired by Inside the Actors Studio, but it's not their concept. They stole it from Bernard Pivot, who stole it from Marcel Proust. Mandy Haynes, are you ready for the lightning round?
Ready.
Okay. What is your favorite word?
Curmudgeon.
Oh, I like that word. What is your least favorite word?
Awesome.
What turned you on?
Great sense of humor.
Yeah, me too. What turned you off?
Overinflated ego.
What is your idea of happiness?
Being content, which is harder than you think. It sounds easy, but yeah.
Who's your favorite author?
Rick Bragg.
Excellent. If you could be a character from any novel throughout history, who would that be?
Scout.
Scout from To Kill a Mockingbird. What other profession besides your own would you want to attempt?
Welder. I'd like to be a welder.
Oh, I wouldn't have guessed that. What profession would you least want to do?
The one that I did for 16 years, no more echocardiograms.
Throw that one out the window. All right, last one. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you reach the check-in desk?
You did good.
Excellent. Mandy Haynes, thank you very much. And check out her books, Walking the Wrong Way Home and Sharp as a Serpent's Tooth. Thank you for being on our show.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks. It was fun.
This has been a presentation of Austin Liti Limits, made possible with help from our good friends at Blue Ink Review, where typing "the end" is just the beginning. Find out more at blueinkreview.com.